Liam Hickey, Olympic silver medalist in para ice hockey 2022 and 2018, gold medalist, world champion in 2024 and 2017. Liam, please tell us where you were born and raised.
Yeah, born in St. John's, Newfoundland. Raised here for most of my life. Spent a little bit in Calgary, but most of it's been here.
Love it. All right, Liam, I'll ask you the question that I ask all athletes. Why para sports?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting question, especially for someone like myself. I think a bit of a unique sport background. I was born missing the femur in my right leg, so due to a birth defect, was I won't say forced into a parasport avenue, but that was what provided me the best options. Basically, a little backstory on I guess the disability and my early upbringing. Being born missing the femur pretty much presented my parents with a couple options. Doctors obviously had a pretty long sit down conversation with them and explained for them it was two options really. It was rotation plasty, so based on the PFFD, Proximal Femoral Focal Deficiency, quite a mouthful. It was either that route, which is basically flipping the I guess calf and foot 180 degrees to be able to use the heel as a knee. That was one
That's
pretty intense
interesting.
route. And then
Yeah.
the other one was, I guess, femoral lengthening, which pretty much would have taken me out of my childhood. That would have been 10 to 12 years of pretty consistent surgeries and medical appointments to try and lengthen that to a point where I might be able to use it fully functionally. Um, and then lucky for me, honestly, my parents chose the rotation plasty route. So went through that major surgery when I was 4 years old. And as you can imagine, a 4 year old going through that is pretty intense. So for me, kind of coming out of it, it was, what ways can I really enjoy life? And my family was always athletic, and sport was that avenue for me. So played basketball, ball hockey, a bunch of things growing up, and then kind of found that parasport route.
So, Liam, already you've shed some light on what I knew about your disability, as you say. So you weren't born without a femur, is that right? It was a shortened femur?
Yeah, it was like I think it was maybe an inch of femur, not much to really do anything with. So it was very minimal.
Ah, okay. Because Liam, the story, what I heard, there was no femur, and my
Yeah,
question,
yeah,
my question then, at the risk of being graphic, so
all
for
good.
those that don't know, the femur is the upper part.
Correct.
My question was going to be, if there was no femur, what was there a lower half of the leg as well? And if so, what was that connected to? But you're saying that there was a shortened femur, and
Yep.
and the lower part of the leg is connected to this shortened femur. Is that right?
Correct. So there was, a very small amount of femur.
A
So
very small
the
amount of
calf,
femur.
the shin bone, that all basically was healthy and normal. So if you just picture the leg, if you just cut out the femur and the thigh, my
Yeah,
knee had basically somehow naturally infused itself into my hip socket. So
yeah.
I mean, it's extremely complex. I'll never fully understand how that
No,
happens,
it
but
is sounds so
um,
complex, man. Do you know
right.
any details about like the frequency of this? Is like the rarity of it?
I don't know specific numbers. I just know that, when my family was going through it and when my parents were kind of looking for other, I guess, people to talk to, there was maybe two other people that doctors across Canada could connect
Yeah.
them with to discuss it. Now, I know since then, it's become a very predominant surgery in cancer treatment. So, guys that or girls, anybody who gets cancer in the femur or around the top of the knee, that becomes an option. And there's two guys alone on my national team that have had that surgery based on their cancer diagnosis. So, but yeah, it's very unique.
So interesting. So interesting. All right, we're not going to dwell too much on that. But this is how Liam Hickey comes into the world. And as you say, you come into the world into a very athletic family. So let's, Liam, jump forward here. You have an athletic upbringing, lots of sports, but I want to go up to. We did start talking about para ice hockey, but Liam, that's not where you get your start, and that's why, because I'm using my brain here, Liam. I framed the question: why para sports? Talk about your first experience on, let's call it like the international stage, representing Canada in the field of Paralympics themselves.
Yeah, so for me, that started with wheelchair basketball. I found both wheelchair basketball, and at the time it was referred to as sledge hockey, now para ice hockey. But I found the two sports at the same time. I was 8 years old, through the local Easter Seals program here, which offers kids, and adults with disabilities a chance to play more so recreational para sport. But found both of those sports through that organization, which I'm very thankful for, and fell in love with that right away. Like I said, I was always athletic growing up, played a lot of stand up baseball, basketball, and then naturally found my way into parasport, which kind of offered me that way to excel at something. And I was lucky enough to accelerate pretty quickly. Made it. So I started playing the sport when I was 8, and I was at my first national team development camp when I was 11. Um, Basically
This
went.
is para basketball we're talking about now, right?
This is wheelchair basketball. Yep.
Wheelchair basketball, yeah.
So we basically got introduced to a head coach at Wheelchair Basketball Canada, Steve Bialois, and he brought me to a development camp, a U under 23 dev camp, and worked my way up from there. Then had a tryout for the men's national team when I was 14, 15, and then made the team when I was 16 for the Rio 2016 Summer Paralympics in Brazil. So that was obviously a major milestone for me, not just me, but my family as well. And that was my first, I'll say, major games experience.
I don't think you know this, Liam. The Paralympian who I interviewed before you was Patrick Anderson.
I know Pat well.
He's the goat, eh? He's the goat of
Yes,
wheelchair basketball.
I don't think there'll ever be another one like Pat.
He's something. Liam, I'm interested in athletic development in all avenues. Talk about, all right, so you're 8, you're trying both. You're trying para ice hockey at that time called sledge hockey,
Yeah.
and basketball. I'm curious, what were the factors at work that drew you toward at that time basketball instead of ice hockey? Was it Did you have a natural disposition more towards basketball? You tell us the story. How did it come to be that that one won out at that time?
Yeah, it's kind of funny actually because my dad growing up, basketball was his sport. That's what
Okay.
he loved to do. He excelled at that as well, and so naturally I was always around the gym growing up. He never really was into to hockey. He loved hockey. We're both huge Montreal Canadiens fans, and so hockey was a huge part of my life growing up. But
Like my family, Liam. We have more in common than I thought, Liam.
yeah, there we go. And so no, honestly, absolutely loved both sports at the time, and it came down to the point that fortunately enough, I was involved in both national development programs around the same time. I think I was part of the my first dev team with sledge hockey when I was 13 or 14. So within those couple of years, it was kind of like whatever opportunity came first.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And at that point, it was the 2016 Summer Paralympics. I had made the final cut of the 2014 Sochi Games for sledge hockey. I was down to the top 21. And then
I
head
did not
coach
know
basically
that.
told my parents and told them that I was too young and too small to actually go to the big tournament. But yeah, no, it's kind of the opportunity that really presented itself, and I didn't want to pass up.
Liam, let me ask you this. And I said we have so much in common, both very proud Newfoundlanders. But that being said, Liam, I'm going to get you to talk about some of the challenges living on this island at the farthest, most easternly point on the continent presents to athletes of all types. There's challenges in for someone from there to get noticed, to get national recognition, just geographically. It's always going to be a challenge, I think.
Yeah.
Um, I don't want to crap on Newfoundland too much here. I don't want you to do it either. But just talk about some of the challenges in that regard, Liam.
No, I think that's part of the reality of coming from this province, and there's a ton of positives, and along with that comes some negatives, and then I won't even say negatives, but more challenges like you mentioned. And for me, it's unique because parasport in itself is a challenge to get involved with just because
Yeah,
of numbers, funding, right across Canada. Now that's gotten much better, and I hope to see that continue to improve. But in Newfoundland and Labrador, when I started, there was only one recreational program, and that was Easter Seals, and that wasn't even a fully structured program. There's no actual real athlete development plan, no long term athlete development plan for sure. And then even for sledge hockey, there was only one team, so I was 11 playing on a men's team, which is completely against any kind of LTAD plan you would ever
sure.
have. And that's not the proper way that kids should be, I guess, forced into training and learning the sport. But thankfully, because of the community here, I made that work and my family made that work, and I'm forever grateful for the people that brought me in, and put up with my 11-year-old self to help me, progress in the sports the way I did.
Yeah.
But that's one of the realities of parasport, especially in this province, is we don't have access to the same funding, we don't have access to the same programs or coaching. It's really, it comes down to volunteers that devote a lot of their time. People like Raylene Baggs here, who her son is Gavin Baggs is actually making his way up to the national team in para ice hockey now as well. But she dedicates her free time to keep parasport going. Other people like Gary Power, I know nobody's going to necessarily know who I'm talking about, but these are the types of individuals that, keep things going. The things
Yeah.
that both of my parents did to be able to fundraise so I could go to a travel league in the Atlantic provinces, because that was the only way I had access to games. Those are the types of things that need to be done in order for kids like myself to have a chance at the time.
Mhm.
And not to get into it too much, but that's part of my goal moving forward, and has been for the last 10 years or so on the national
No,
team.
no,
Is
get into that. That's a good. It's a good goal. Get into that, Liam. Go,
Yeah, I
go
think
ahead.
just leaving a legacy for people coming up behind me. And I think there's been 3 or 4 Paralympians from this province, and I want to see that in double digits. And I think creating more awareness about what parasport is, and I like to think I've had an impact on that in this province, and really bring awareness to the fact that parasport is elite sport when you get to those levels.
Yeah.
I think that mindset has started to change globally, but especially in a smaller province, I think it can take a little extra time for people to really open their eyes and see the potential of it. So that's one of my main goals. It's kind of what motivates me at this point in my career, other than winning a gold medal. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's pretty much where it's at.
We're going to get into winning gold medals, but Liam, I want to add one thing, because you're not going to toot your own horn, but talking about this kind of leaving a legacy and growing the sport and whatnot, I'm just going to tell everyone it was last year Liam was named a recipient, the Order of Newfoundland, which is a big deal for these kind of efforts on his part.
No, thank
Um,
you. Appreciate it.
One more question about long-term athlete development.
Yep.
And this, Liam, I want to get your opinion on this. I first heard this again. Was talking to Patrick, but the idea, Liam, of getting able-bodied athletes, for lack of a better term,
Yep.
to compete with the Paralympic athletes. The thought process being, if you get great athletes and they compete against each other, what's the saying? Iron sharpens iron. So because the pool, simply the pool of Paralympic athletes is smaller, is there a advantage to drawing in able-bodied athletes? Say, hey, come do our thing, play our sport, play our para ice hockey, play wheelchair basketball, because there's probably a bigger pool of competent athletes to draw from, and then that raises the level of the Paralympic athletes. Do you have a thought on that strategy, Liam?
100%. I'm very, very much aligned with Pat on that. I think any chance you can bring able-bodied people to the sport is not only beneficial for programming, but the overall awareness of what parasport is. And for example, any program here in the province does not function without the able-bodied participants. So, our para hockey team here, I think it's got 12 or 13 bodies right now, and over 50% of them are able-bodied athletes. So, without those folks, we don't have a program. There's maybe 4 or 5 of us that actually have a disability and want to compete. So those are the people that keep it going, and I say keep it going, but they have a genuine interest in the sport.
Yeah, of course.
That's what you want to promote,
Yeah,
across the country and across the world.
it's a great laugh, Liam.
Yeah. Oh,
Get
100%.
out, get out on the sled, wheel around the ice. Nothing
Yep.
wrong with it.
Oh, people love it, and
Yeah,
especially para hockey with the physicality and stuff. It's addicting. So
it is. By the way, I don't know if anyone's ever watched a para ice hockey game. There's, Liam, before I came to talk to you, I checked out a few games, and I see
yeah,
these freaking collisions, and I'm like, is that allowed? That's a penalty. That's not a penalty. But it is a sport that has that feature. If you're so interested.
it does. It does. Yeah.
Anyway, let's talk about the sport now, Liam, if we can. So we're flying through a very, very illustrious career. 2016 at the Paralympics, but in a different sport. You're also one of the few athletes to ever do both summer and winter, by the way. But anyway, thereafter comes the switch to para ice hockey, which is going to be the focus of your career for the foreseeable future. Liam, let's just do a nuts and bolts kind of thing here for people who have not seen the sport.
Yep.
How would you describe it using, I guess, maybe the frame of reference of the sport that everyone knows, ice hockey? Tell us what is para ice hockey. What does it look like? What is it?
Yeah, so I think in nuts and bolts term, it's basically hockey on your butt. Like we, in a very literal sense, we were sat down in a sled, we call it, in a bucket that at the highest level is completely 3D printed to essentially your butt, and it needs it to fit like a shoe fits in basketball. It needs to be completely custom, completely fitted to your body, so that there's no movement amongst that in your sled. And then there's two tubes that follow underneath the bucket, extend out to your legs depending on your disability. So a double amputee, we call them double amps. That would be a very short nose of your sled, obviously without legs. And then a certain length is determined based on your leg length. For myself, I don't wear my prosthetic in the sled. Nobody does, just because of we want to limit the weight and
Sure.
overall just the comfortability of it. So for me, my sled is skinnier to fit kind of one leg and then an attachment for the shortened prosthetic that I wear on the ice. And then under that, directly under our butts, is two blades, and they can be as close as basically 1 centimeter apart or 6 inches apart. So when you start off in the sport, you always start off, minimum 5 inches between your blades for balance purposes. It's the only way you really get used to it. And then as you get better, more comfortable, and build up that, I guess, core strength and coordination, the blades move in. Mine are as close as they can be legally now on the ice, so that's 1 centimeter. There's a small space between them, and that just helps with turning, your agility,
Sure.
just your overall agility for the game. And then we use two sticks, a left and a right. I've actually got two here.
Yeah, hold those things up.
We've got these are the weapons, we call them.
They are weapons. They could be a weapon.
Yeah, so we propel ourselves by these picks.
Yeah.
So this is what digs into the ice and propels us.
Le-
We
Hang on, Liam. Stupid question.
Yep.
What is the penalty for butt ending in Paralympic hockey?
It depends on how severe it is. So normally it could just be a high sticking, but if you actually use
You'd kill
that
someone.
part, which we do a lot of in the corners, you can get a good game or two suspension. So you need to be careful about when you do it.
Wow.
So yeah, on that, then try and show it as best I can. So we have a left and a right stick. Obviously, that's the biggest difference I would say from stand-up hockey, is that we need to be dominant with both hands. So the best players in the world can shoot just as good with their non-dominant as they can with their dominant. But yeah, so it's pretty interesting to see. I'll say the progression of the equipment. When you
Oh, yeah?
look back at the first Paralympic Games and the sleds that were used there, they literally weighed about 60 pounds, and they were
Wow.
solid steel, and they used pretty much, they were ripping off skate blades and somehow attaching them to the bottom of these buckets. And now a sled, my custom sled now weighs maybe 5 or 6 pounds. So they've got it down to a science. And the sticks as well. They used to be fully just one piece wooden.
Oh, yeah.
Which
Like an ice hockey.
I can stand up. Yeah. And then slowly moved into two-piece composite sticks, and now companies like Bauer, I think even CCM, different companies like that. Warrior was kind of the first one to really take it under their wing and create a fully composite one-piece sled hockey stick. And yeah, it's been cool to see the progression, and we hope to see it continue. But yeah, I don't know if that was very nuts and bolts. I kind of got into it there, but
No, that's
it's tough to
pretty
explain.
very interesting. Very interesting. And speaking of interesting, Liam, what I'd like to do for the remainder of our time here today is take advantage of a very rare opportunity, which is get to talk to an athlete, aka you, who is currently right in the middle of training for the biggest event of in his life, in this case, the 2026 Winter Olympics. It's rare to get athletes like mid-season, but Liam has been very gracious to give me this time here today. So I do want to talk about the preparation that he's currently engaged in getting ready for this the big event, the biggest of the big events, the Winter Olympics. But before we get there, I got one more question for you. So there was another big transition that happened during your para ice hockey career, and that was a switch of positions, Liam.
Yeah.
So,
So for me, I went from I started playing. I was a forward. That's what I wanted to play growing up, and
yep.
what I first started playing on the national team for, I'd say, my first 4 or 5 years. Had a coach a few years ago. I think we were going into just after Pyeongchang, so just after 2018. Halfway through that quad, so my mind works in 4 year cycles because that's how I've been
Yeah.
training for most of my life.
Like
But
all the Olympians, yeah.
yeah, 2 years after 2018 or 2020, essentially, around COVID, I switched to defense. Played that right into Beijing 2022. I liked it. We kind of created a unique position. We called it a rover defense, which was basically an extremely
I love
offensive
it.
defensive defenseman. Sorry.
Liam,
Um,
that was I used to coach ball hockey,
yeah.
and that was my position, a rover,
Oh yeah.
a D who
Oh,
goes up and back.
yeah. Yeah. So it was one of the, I guess, newer hybrid positions, I'll say, created
I
in the
love
sport,
it.
but it allowed me to kind of bring my forward skill set to a defensive position.
Well, there's a good history of those kind of players in hockey. Paul Coffey, you could have said, was a rover. He
Yep,
would go up and come
yep,
back, and so that was okay. Because where I was going to go with that was the strategy behind doing that. Because again, folks, it wasn't like he was booted back to defense. You were a high scoring forward, but the coaches made it. It was a strategic decision that we're going to make Liam play this position. Is that right?
yeah. It essentially allowed us to have four forwards on the ice in 1D. So out of that came some unique plays and stuff that we could run, while still being covered on the
Let
defensive
me
end.
put you on the spot, and if you were to summarize what skills are necessary for a player who's going to do that, why you? And we just talk, so you can visualize what he's talking about. But what are the skills that said, my Liam Hickey's going to be good at doing this rover position?
Yeah, I'd say top two is speed. Been fortunate enough to be one of the fastest. And then hockey IQ. I think just having the sense and kind of being able to read the game a couple steps ahead, that
Yep.
allowed me to, I think, be successful as a forward and transferred well to being kind of an offensive defenseman, and knowing when I could jump into the play, knowing when to hold back, knowing when we were reading a transition or a turnover. And I think that's probably two of my, I'll say two of the skill sets I'm proudest
Yeah.
of, and love to bring to that game because I'm back on forward now. I don't even know if you would be fully aware of that, but
No, I was
uh,
not aware of that. So you're back on
we,
forward now.
yeah, I moved back on forward after Beijing, and that was honestly just through conversations with staff and even management at some points. But it was more just like, you know, hey, where do you truly want to play? And
Yeah,
I
yeah.
feel like I can produce more and bring more to the team as a forward. And I've always had the mindset of play whatever, do whatever will help the team. But when I was given that chance, I voiced my love for forward. We'll say.
That's a great attitude, though, Liam. And again, it just speaks to your all-round athleticism, wheelchair basketball, forward, and defense in para ice hockey. So those are all different types of things. Good to be well-rounded, a versatile athlete.
Helps for sure, definitely.
All right, so let's now start talking about the granddaddy of them all, the 2026 Winter Olympics. And I'd love to hear, Liam, how you're getting ready for that. Okay, now, what's the best way to do that? I'm going to kind of take some direction from you here, but maybe just in my mind, if we go back to, let's say, a year from now, like a 1 year out, um, or maybe 4 years out, however you want to begin describing how an athlete, a current athlete, is preparing for the grandest stage of them all.
Yeah, I think I'll start 4 years ago.
Okay,
I think that's honestly easiest to give the whole picture, I guess,
sure.
mindset to it.
Yep.
Um, and then obviously a year out, so much stuff happens that it's pretty
L-
exciting to talk about. But
Let me throw in one more thing, just so I sound like I'm smart. This is so 4 years ago, you guys come second
yeah,
in the 2022 Olympics. The USA beat you,
yeah,
and so you lose the gold medal game at the Olympics that year. Um, then the planning starts at some point thereafter. Take it away.
yeah. So I'm honestly going to touch a little bit up on Beijing because I think the history of the games you play in affects the way you prepare for the next one.
Okay.
Um, So, even just briefly, so 2018 we lost. We were up 1-0, 36 seconds left in the game, and they scored with an empty net, brought it to overtime, and ended up winning. So, most devastating loss of my life.
Christ Almighty.
A lot of us were struggling with that for a long time. I still do. But so that kind of brought the motivation even more to not want to let that happen again moving into 2022. Fast forward those 3.5, 4 years. We're dealing with COVID, so the whole year leading up to that, the whole 2 years leading up to that, training is not the same. We spent 2 full months in a hotel room, isolated by ourselves. We wouldn't see each other unless we were at the rink on the ice. And then every team meeting, every team meal, there were no team meals. We ate by ourselves, COVID tests every day. And then we didn't fully come together as a team until Beijing. So mentally, that was like the hardest training environment of my life. And all of us, mental health is such a big conversation in sport. And that was not a good setup for it.
No.
So
Bad times.
Exactly. So, and I'm saying that from a perspective of I was still fortunate enough to be able to play for Canada and travel and compete, and obviously a lot of people went through some pretty devastating things during that time. So I don't want to sound ungrateful, but as an athlete trying to mentally prepare for games that you're mentally not in the greatest spot going into it was a different challenge that I don't think any of us really thought we'd ever have to face. And to put it bluntly, like we got our ass kicked in Beijing, and I think that goes back to the fact that none of us were really mentally ready for the games in the right sense. And so coming out of that, when you talk about these 4 year chunks, it's crazy how fast your career goes by when you're going 4 years at a time. And I remember being 16 and being like, oh man, I have like a whole life ahead of me doing this. And now I'm 27 and it's like I haven't won a gold medal yet, so it goes pretty quick. You don't get this opportunity every year. So So sorry to add on to that. But
No, that's great stuff. Great stuff, man.
Yeah. So coming out of Beijing, then there's a big, I'll say, mental reset. Like every quad offers the new opportunity for like a new mindset. It's kind of like a fresh start, even though it's the next 4 years. So coming out of Beijing, we were really eager to kind of rebuild the foundation and rebuild the culture of the team, and that was a huge point of view for us. And we've been on the losing side of things for quite a while now against the Americans, so it's kind of just back to the drawing board to try and figure out what to do. And there's a team component of that, but then there's also the individual side of that. And for me, it's been picking away at university. It's felt like I've been doing university for 30 years now because I can only take part-time courses. But you've got that stuff. I was with my girlfriend at the time. We got engaged then a couple of years after that in the middle of that quad, or in this quad, and then married this summer. So as much as we are considered professional athletes, we have life going on outside of that, and we're not paid like professional athletes. So
Sure.
you kind of got to keep things going outside of training for the biggest games of your life. And this one has been unique. I've been in a pretty serious leadership role with the team now for quite a few years.
Assistant captain.
So that's brought on a new perspective. And I think as any athlete, every year is an important year. The commitment to training, the commitment to just living a healthy lifestyle. And I've been good at that for 10 plus years, obviously, to be able to maintain this, but it doesn't get any easier. So I think the last couple of years in particular, like working a full-time job and stuff and trying to finish school and all that has added that extra layer in.
Yeah, for sure.
But with all of that, the worst days are still the best when you get to play for your country. So, I think you kind of keep that mindset going through it all. And, we've had the opportunity now to win my second world championship, which was in 2024, which is the middle point of a quadrennial when you're training for the next Paralympics. So timing wise, that was huge because we hadn't won in years. So to be able to do that in the middle of a quadrennial kind of gave everybody the boost, especially the organization and players, that we can win.
Speaking of the players and winning that world championship, clearly it's a big deal to win the world championship, but it's not the Olympics. How much value do the management of the team put in that victory, Liam, in terms of the players themselves? I mean, what I'm getting at is this: you got to make all these teams, right? You got to make the 2026 Olympic team. So
Sure.
the fact that you guys put a team together that won in 2024, try to articulate how much stock does that hold and who's going to be around 2 years later in 2026?
It's massive, I would say. Obviously, I'm not the person making any of those team decisions, but when it comes down to it, when you see guys that can win and know how to win, you don't really tend to want to break that up. So,
Yeah.
for us, I think there was definitely a few guys that, especially young guys and guys that haven't been a part of any big national or international games, seeing them perform the way they did and help us achieve, and some guys help lead that team, and allow us to capture a gold medal. It does a lot for the team, and it shows what kind of team environment and culture we have to be able to
Yeah.
win.
So when is it announced this is the team that's going to the Olympics?
Yeah, so for us, it'll be not long after Christmas. I think they named the team maybe middle to late January. Um,
So that's
we'll,
later. Now, your games are a little bit later. I was going to again compare it to hockey,
yeah,
but
yeah,
the
because we'll be the Paralympics is like, I think it starts a week after the Olympics ends, roughly.
yeah, but still, that's not much time, man, in terms of naming the team to the actual drop of
No,
the puck
so
at the Olympics.
yeah, I guess a little bit of insight on that too. So we in a 4-year quad, the tryout for a Paralympic team kind of starts at that first year of the quadrennial.
Sure.
So I think the first selection camp we had back in 2018-19, there was like 30 something guys around, and then that basically gets watered down throughout the years. So now we've been carrying like 20 to 21 athletes
Yeah.
for about a year and a bit now, and that's kind of the top then 21 that are going to be chosen for the Paralympics. So at this point now, we'll pretty much in the stage of cutting a couple more. We have a tournament in a couple weeks here,
Hmm.
so there'll be a few more kind of cuts around that,
Hmm.
and then we'll pretty much carry our Paralympic roster per se before it's announced
Hmm.
after Christmas. But the general group has been together now for a year and a bit, if that makes sense.
Sure. Yeah, yeah. And let's talk about that year. Um, Talk about the process of centralization, Liam, and what that's all about today or these days leading up to the Olympics.
Yeah, it's one of the fun parts, I would say, and at the same time most demanding.
Yeah.
So for us, we're considered a decentralized team, which means year round we aren't together every single day.
Hang on. So that means there's some teams are centralized.
They do. So like Team China,
USA?
USA centralizes. They aren't
Really?
centralized. Yeah. But teams like China, I think South Korea, um, there might be a couple other countries. They're actually like pretty much paid professionally
Well,
to
that's what I was going
train
to
year
say.
round.
They must be paying those guys if they're going to centralize them to get like for a whole year.
They are. Yeah.
And
So it's
Canada is not that. Canada is decentralized.
We are. Yeah, I wouldn't say we're not to the point yet where we're paid professionally enough to live together year round.
Uh-huh.
Um, so hopefully it gets there. But
So
it,
Liam, over the course of the last year, yeah, hopefully, uh, over the course of the last year, let's do it in 1 year out.
yep.
How many times have you gotten together with the team?
Cool. We pretty much average at least a week or two every month.
A week or two every month. They fly everybody in from wherever they are,
Yep.
and you do
Yep.
whatever you're going to do.
It kind of this season in particular. So our season starts in September. We had the big selection camp, which was built in with the orientation camp with the men's and the women's. We have a bunch of kind of Paralympic, Olympic meetings, breakdowns, briefings, all that kind of stuff. And then right after that, we were home for a week. We went to Ostrava, Czech Republic for a couple weeks. I just got home from that about a week and a half ago.
I know.
And then I leave on Thursday of this week, and then we're home on December 7th for Christmas, and then we're gone January 5th, I think. So it's
What did I tell you, folks? The man is busy, and yet here he is talking about this preparation, getting ready for the Winter Olympics.
no, it's
So,
a pleasure.
let's take us behind the scenes of what you're doing personally. I just asked you about how often the team gets together for team-related things, which is obviously crucial in a team sport like para ice hockey.
Yep,
Talk about your own training. Okay, let's say over the last year. Let's make it
yep.
simple again. How many days a week? What are you doing? Just talk about your training. My students would be interested to know what kind of stuff you're doing for your own personal training to get ready.
Yeah, for sure. So we follow a very specific training program. We have a whole IST strength and conditioning cardiovascular team that monitors us. We have to pretty much relay our workouts and everything back to our staff, and heart rate monitors are involved with that, etc. So for us, it's 5 to 6 strength workouts a week,
Okay.
3 to 4 cardios a week, and those range from 30 minutes to upwards of an hour, depending on what training block we're in.
Okay.
The strength workouts are anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour and a half as well.
Okay.
And then we're on the ice a minimum of 3 hours a week. And that was kind of just set as a minimum because, again, guys are working and stuff. So it's got to be manageable.
Okay, so let me ask you this: you're on the ice, but who are you on the ice with?
So for me, it's me and Gavin Baggs, which is, I briefly mentioned Gavin. He's a young up and coming kid that's been involved with our development team and then made the men's team over the last year or so. So he's kind of trying to make the final push now for a Paralympics.
But okay, so you and him are on the ice, but like what ice, Liam? I'm talking like you guys get. Is there coaches present? Are you guys on the ice doing your own thing?
So my entire career, I have been training by myself on the ice. So it's a lot of skill work, a lot of agility
Like
work.
just you?
Yep. So
Wow.
it's been beneficial now to get Gavin to the point where we can kind of compete against each other, and that adds obviously
Yeah.
another element to that, which I've never
Yeah.
had. But our I have to give a lot of credit to our club team because we also skate every Saturday. So
Okay.
that's the only chance that I'm really on the ice with more than myself and get to actually shoot on a goalie. But
Yeah.
um,
But again, the challenge that you're facing, again, with all due respect, like
yeah,
those athletes are not, they're not Paralympic level athletes. I mean, right? This is it's a challenge for an athlete coming from where you and I come from,
yeah,
and trying to develop your own game to the highest possible level. Liam, the other line that I've said many, many times is the way you get better is you play or practice, even more importantly, I think, against people that are better than you.
yeah,
And
yeah.
if
I
you
think.
if you've
Oh,
done
sorry.
as well as you've done without that luxury, I mean, that's a tremendous kudos to you.
No, I appreciate it. But the one thing I'd say to that is it's such a mindset thing. Like I don't think people or studies or whatnot give it a lot of credit or as much credit as they should to what a mindset can do.
Yeah.
And I think for me, I had to learn that from an early age. Even when I started playing sledge hockey when I was 8, by the time I was 10, and in no way do I want to sound like a cocky individual or what, but I was so far ahead of the folks that I was playing against at an Easter Seals level, which is very much a recreational and it's great for people with more severe disabilities, but that was not a competitive atmosphere for myself. So as a kid,
Yeah.
I was already shaping my brain in a way that I could make it competitive. Whether that was only trying to use my left hand for something, or I could only shoot on the bottom left corner, or like the smallest details, but
Wow.
mentally every practice or every chance I was on the ice, it was thinking about it in a different way. I wasn't playing down to the level. I was finding a way to play above it, and obviously you can only do that to a certain extent. But I
Yeah.
do think that is what has allowed me to compete at that level and excel at that level because when I was 11 and 12 and started seeing and being exposed to these national team environments, that's all it took for me to then go home and know mentally what it felt like to be able to mimic that by myself. And again, that's you're not getting that same competition level, but internally you'd be surprised at I think what you can do. And Kobe Bryant, one of my biggest sporting idols, and his mindset. That's kind of how I've tried to mimic. I'll say my sporting career.
That's amazing. And I think, Liam, there's lessons there in life, not just sports.
Yeah, I
Great,
agree.
great ideas, man. Great ideas. All right, so let's again summarize the training to get ready. So here's what we have so far. You said like once a month, a weekend a month, the team gets together.
Usually a week to 2 weeks a month, so it could be
Okay,
anywhere from like 7 to 14 days.
okay. So there is that team building component. You're on the ice by yourself doing the the very very technical skills of power ice hockey 3 times a week. You said 5 or 6 weightlifting workouts per week. And you said 3 cardio sessions a week. What kind of cardio? What do you do for cardio?
Assault bike or aerodyne bike. I know people call it different things, but
Yeah.
You can move your hands and pedal. It's got the fan in the middle.
Yep.
So that's what I found most beneficial, just for in terms of building kind of that muscle stamina along with the cardiovascular.
Yeah.
I know some guys might use a bike and stuff, but I just find that's one of the better ways. I know ski erg is a very popular way of cardio for a lot of guys or athletes in para hockey, just
Yeah.
because it mimics that motion, but you're also building that specific cardiovascular endurance that the training program is all about.
Yeah.
But that's kind of why I've chosen that.
So there we go. That was in a 5 or 10 minute nutshell the recipe to develop a Paralympic ice hockey player. Well, one more thing. Let me throw this at you because I'm a dietitian by trade. Just if I
Yeah.
said to you,
Okay.
nutrition, the broad, what does it mean to you as a Paralympic ice hockey player?
It's massive. I think that's outside of the actual strength and cardio training. That's what I feel the biggest difference in my body, whether I'm doing it well or doing it poorly. You know, it's funny because after every training camp or something, I usually give myself a day to kind of eat whatever I want. Don't really put too much thought into it because I feel pretty guilty pretty quickly if I'm treating myself poorly. I'll say,
Yeah.
but the difference in, again, I think it goes back to the difference in the mindset and stuff that does to me, just because I've lived a life of trying to be the healthiest version of myself. Mentally, I find it the biggest negative shift if I'm not doing things properly.
There you go.
Obviously, over a certain period of time, you're going to see the physical, um, I guess, implications of that. But for me, it's more mental. Like it does not take much to make myself feel pretty guilty for what I'm doing. So
Wow. Okay. Liam, fantastically interesting stuff. Just to finish up here, Winter Olympics, a few months away. A final mind frame that you guys have going in. If you could summarize the attitude of the athletes that are getting ready to take the ice for Team Canada, only a few short months away, 2026 gold medal, Liam.
yeah, the mindset for us is gold or nothing at this point. We've recently we brought in a new head coach only actually right after we won in 2024. But that's kind of from top down from Hockey Canada right to the individual players. It's gold or nothing. So we're tired of silver medals.
Well, Liam, what can I say? I wish you the best of luck. You've been a great representative of Canada, and you've been a great representative of Newfoundland.
Thank you very much.
So, with that being said, I will sign off like I always sign off by saying, let's go Canada. Support Canadian athletes.